The silence in the courtroom was deafening as Judge Harrison delivered my sentence. 5 years in federal prison for financial fraud I didn't commit. My brother Marcus sat in the gallery, his face a perfect mask of familial concern, but I could see the triumph in his eyes. Ms. Rebecca Foster, the judge continued, given the extent of the fraud and your apparent lack of remorse, I have no choice but to impose the maximum sentence. My name is Rebecca Foster, and at 32 years old, I was going to prison for my brother's crimes. I'm so sorry, Becca, Marcus said afterward, catching me in the hallway before the marshals led me away. If there was anything I could do. I met his gaze steadily. There's plenty you could do, Marcus. You could tell the truth. He placed a hand on my shoulder, the gesture meant to look comforting to observers. The evidence is clear, sis. The signatures, the transfers, all of it leads to you. Maybe prison will give you time to reflect on your choices. The evidence was clear, perfectly clear. Every fraudulent transaction, every forged document, every stolen dollar had been meticulously crafted to point to me. Marcus had spent 2 years building his scheme, using my position as CFO of Foster Financial to mask his theft. What he didn't know was that I'd been watching him the entire time. It started when I noticed small discrepancies in our company's books. Nothing major, just numbers that didn't quite add up. Most people would have written it off as accounting errors, but I'd spent my life being careful, methodical, precise. These weren't mistakes. I began documenting everything, secretly tracking the money as it moved through a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. Marcus thought he was clever, using my signature and credentials to authorize transfers, but he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd learned all our father's lessons too. Howard Foster hadn't built Foster Financial by being trusting. He taught us both to watch for betrayal, to always have a backup plan. Keep your evidence close and your enemies closer, he'd say, usually after closing another ruthless deal. The safe in his old office, now Marcus's office, still had our childhood fingerprints on its brass handle. We'd spent hours playing with it as kids, learning its combination, hiding our treasures inside. Marcus thought he knew all its secrets. He was wrong. The night before my arrest, when I knew what was coming, I'd made one final visit to that safe. Behind the false back panel that our father had installed decades ago, I placed a small hard drive containing everything I'd gathered over the past 2 years. Every fraudulent transfer Marcus had made, every forged document, every piece of evidence showing his guilt and my innocence. Now, as the marshals led me toward the prison transport van, I thought about that hard drive waiting silently in the dark. 5 years was a long time, but Marcus's kind of greed only grows bolder with success. By the time I got out, there would be so much more evidence to add to my collection. Stay strong, sis, Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the courthouse steps. We'll all be waiting for you. I turned back one last time, memorizing his smug expression. I know you will, brother. I know you will. Prison was exactly as harsh as I'd expected. Danbury Federal Correctional Institution became my new home, my world shrinking to concrete walls and strict routines. But while Marcus thought I was rotting away in a cell, I was watching, waiting, and planning. My cellmate, Teresa, had been a computer programmer before insider trading landed her in prison. She taught me everything she knew about cybersecurity and digital forensics during our long hours in the yard. 5 years is nothing, she said one day as we watched other inmates play basketball, especially if you use the time right. I did use it right, every letter from home, every newspaper article about Foster Financial's continued success, every smug visit from Marcus. It all went into my mental files. I tracked the company's public records, noting new patterns emerging that matched the old fraud. Marcus visited every month, maintaining the facade of the concerned brother. He'd bring news about the company, about our parents, about his own rising star in the financial world. Each visit was a performance meant to show everyone how much he cared about his poor, misguided sister. The company's doing better than ever, he told me during one visit, 2 years into my sentence. Dad's finally retiring, giving me full control. Imagine that, the younger sibling taking charge. I noted the flash of real emotion in his voice. Marcus had always resented being second born, second in line, second in our father's estimation. Now he had everything he'd wanted, built on the foundation of my imprisonment. Congratulations, I said mildly. I'm sure you'll do great things. His eyes narrowed slightly at my tone. But he couldn't see past his own triumph to recognize the threat beneath my words. 3 years into my sentence, news came that shook the financial world. Foster Financial was expanding, acquiring smaller firms at an aggressive pace. The business papers praised Marcus's bold leadership, but I saw what others missed. The pattern of fraud had grown, spreading into the newly acquired companies like a virus. Teresa helped me track public records during her computer lab time, building a new digital archive of evidence. Your brother's getting sloppy, she observed. Getting bigger means more places to hide money, but it also means more trails to follow. She was right. Marcus's success had made him careless. The same patterns I documented before my arrest were repeating on a larger scale. Fake accounts, inflated numbers, missing funds. All of it carefully hidden from regulators but clearly visible to anyone who knew where to look. 4 years in, our mother died. The guards let me attend the funeral in handcuffs, watched by armed escorts. Marcus gave a moving eulogy about family and legacy, his eyes wet with tears that almost looked real. "Mom never believed you were guilty," he told me afterward, his voice low. "Right until the end, she defended you." "I know," I replied. She was good at seeing the truth. Something in my voice made him pause, made him really look at me for the first time in years. But whatever doubt flickered across his face was quickly replaced by his usual confidence. "1 more year, sis," he said, straightening his expensive tie. "Then you can come home, start fresh. Maybe there's even a place for you at the company. Something entry-level, of course." I smiled, thinking of the evidence waiting in our father's old safe and all the new proof of Marcus's crimes I collected during my imprisonment. "That's very generous of you, brother. I'll definitely be coming back to Foster Financial." He couldn't know that every visit, every smug update about his success, every piece of news about the company's expansion had only strengthened my resolve. The hard drive in the safe wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a ticking time bomb, waiting for my return to detonate. Freedom smelled like rain and car exhaust. I stood outside Danbury Federal Correctional, watching my reflection in Teresa's glasses as she hugged me goodbye. "Remember what we planned," she whispered. "Take your time. Do it right." I'd been released 3 months early for good behavior. Marcus didn't know yet. I'd made sure the notification paperwork was delayed. I needed these 3 months without his watchful eye. My first stop was a small apartment I'd arranged through Teresa's outside contacts. My second was Foster Financial's headquarters. Not to go inside, not yet, but to watch. The building had changed during my imprisonment. New wings, new security, new logos reflecting the company's expansion. I spent a week observing, learning the patterns. Marcus arrived every morning at 8:15 in his Bentley, left every evening around 7. The security desk changed shifts at 6 p.m. The cleaning crew arrived at 8. All the pieces I needed to get back into my father's old office. But first, I had other preparations to make. The evidence I'd gathered during my imprisonment needed to be organized. Teresa had taught me how to build an unbreakable digital trail, one that would stand up to any scrutiny. Every newspaper clipping, every public record, every piece of financial data I collected over 5 years was carefully compiled and cross-referenced. "Your brother's gotten bolder," my lawyer, David Chen, said as he reviewed the files in his office. I'd hired him secretly, using funds I'd hidden before my arrest. "The fraud has grown exponentially. We're looking at billions now, not millions." "Show me," I said, pulling up a chair. David laid out the pattern. After my imprisonment, Marcus had used Foster Financial's resources to acquire smaller firms, then used those companies to hide even larger frauds. The evidence in the safe would prove his original crimes, but what he'd done since then was far worse. "He's not just stealing anymore," David explained. "He's built a massive Ponzi scheme, using new acquisitions to cover the holes in older frauds, moving money between companies so fast that regulators can't keep up." How many people would be affected if it all collapsed? Thousands. Employees, investors, pension funds. He shook his head. "Your brother's created a house of cards that could take down the entire financial sector when it falls." I thought about Marcus's smug visits to prison, his casual cruelty masked as concern. He'd stolen 5 years of my life, but he'd also stolen the futures of countless innocent people. "What's our next move?" David asked. I pulled out the building plans I'd memorized. "First, we get into that safe. Then we go to the SEC with everything, the old evidence and the new. He'll fight back, David warned. He has powerful friends now, political connections. Let him fight, I said, thinking of all those prison nights I'd spent planning this moment. I'm ready. Getting into Foster Financial after hours was easier than expected. I still had friends inside the company, people who remembered my innocence and had watched Marcus's me-to-work rise with suspicion. One of them, Sarah Fermet, helped me bypass the new security systems. Your brother's been on a rampage lately, she whispered as she let me into the service entrance. 3 departments laid off last month, benefits cut across the board. But he just bought another yacht. The night cleaning crew was used to seeing late workers, and my old employee ID, carefully updated by Teresa's contacts, got me past any curious eyes. The executive floor was empty, dark except for the emergency lights. Marcus's office, our father's old office, had been expanded, modernized. But the safe was still there, hidden behind the same fake wood panel. My fingers remembered the combination instantly. Our mother's birthday, followed by the date our father founded the company. The false back panel slid open silently. The hard drive was exactly where I had left it 5 years ago, covered in a thin layer of dust. But when I reached for it, my hand froze. There was something else in the hidden compartment, something new. A folder thick with documents, labeled with our father's distinctive handwriting. Insurance. I grabbed both the hard drive and the folder, my heart pounding. Down the hall, a door opened, the cleaning crew starting their rounds. I slipped out through the emergency stairs, clutching my discoveries close. Back in my apartment, I spread everything out on the kitchen table. The hard drive contained exactly what I remembered, proof of Marcus's original fraud, the evidence that would overturn my conviction. But the folder. My God. I whispered as I read through our father's documents. He'd known about Marcus's crimes even before I did. He'd been gathering his own evidence, building his own case, but he died before he could use it. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to David Chin, telling him about our father's evidence. The second was to Marcus himself. Becca? His voice was shocked. You're not supposed to be out for 3 more months. Good behavior, I said pleasantly. I thought I'd take you up on that job offer. Are you free for lunch? There was a long pause. Of course. The Prime Club at 1. Perfect. Oh, and Marcus, bring your lawyer. I arrived early at the exclusive restaurant, choosing a corner table with a good view of the entrance. At exactly 1 p.m., Marcus walked in with his attorney and 2 other men I recognized as Foster Financial executives. Bringing backup, brother? I asked as they sat down. Just some concerned colleagues, Marcus replied smoothly. We're worried about you, Becca. Prison can change people. I smiled, opening my laptop. You have no idea how much. I turned the screen toward them. Let's talk about Dad's hidden compartment in the safe. Marcus's face went perfectly still. His lawyer leaned forward, but I held up a hand. Before anyone speaks, you should know that copies of everything have already been sent to the SEC, the FBI, and 3 separate news organizations. Whatever happens to me, the truth comes out. What truth? Marcus tried to laugh, but his voice cracked slightly. You served your time, Becca. Don't try to shift the blame now. I started playing a video of security footage from 5 years ago showing Marcus entering my office late at night, planting the fake documents that would later condemn me. This is just the beginning, I said quietly. I have everything, Marcus. The original fraud, the forged signatures, the fake accounts. And now, thanks to Dad's insurance file, I have proof of what you've done since I've been gone. One of the executives stood up abruptly. I should go. Sit down, Peter, I said, not looking away from Marcus. You're in Dad's files too. All those insider trades you helped Marcus hide. They're about to become very public. The restaurant continued its elegant lunchtime service around us. But at our table, the air was thick with tension. What do you want? Marcus finally asked. First, a full confession clearing my name. Second, immediate resignation from Foster Financial. Third, complete cooperation with federal investigators to ensure that when this house of cards collapses, it doesn't take innocent employees and investors down with it. Marcus's lawyer touched his arm, but he shook it off. And if I refuse? I pulled out a final document, a detailed analysis of Foster Financial's current fraud, showing how Marcus had created a complex Ponzi scheme that would inevitably collapse. Then I released everything immediately. The company fails spectacularly, taking your freedom and reputation with it. Your choice. You destroy our father's legacy, he asked, his voice rising. Everything he built? You destroy his legacy the moment you framed your own sister, I replied calmly. I'm just making things right. What happened next was like watching a building implode in slow motion. Marcus tried to leave. Federal agents were already waiting outside. His colleagues, seeing the evidence, quickly turned against him, offering to cooperate in exchange for leniency. Within hours, Foster Financial's stock was in freefall. Emergency board meetings were called. The SEC announced a formal investigation, and Marcus, finally breaking under the pressure, confessed to everything. I watched from David's office as my brother was led away in handcuffs, just as I had been 5 years ago. But there was no triumph in my heart, only a deep sadness for what could have been. The aftermath was chaotic but controlled. With my help, the authorities were able to untangle Marcus's fraud without destroying the entire company. Most jobs were saved, investments were partially recovered, and Foster Financial survived under new leadership. My conviction was overturned, my record expunged. The press called it a remarkable tale of justice, but they missed the real story. This wasn't about revenge, it was about responsibility. 1 month after Marcus's arrest, I visited him in the same prison where I'd spent 5 years. Why? I asked simply. Why did you do it? He looked older, defeated. I was tired of being second best. Dad always said you were the smart one, the responsible one. I wanted to prove I could be better. And now I understand what Dad really meant. He looked down at his hands. You were better, not because you were smarter, but because you never lost sight of what was right. I left him there, walking out into the sunshine that had been denied to me for so long. Teresa was waiting in the parking lot, now free herself and working as my security consultant. Ready for your first day back? She asked. I nodded. The board have asked me to return as CEO, to help rebuild Foster Financial the right way. The company would be smaller, more ethical, focused on real value rather than quick profits. You know what the hardest part will be? I said as we drove to the office, living up to Dad's real legacy, not the empire he built, but the principles he tried to teach us. And Marcus? He has 15 years to think about those same principles. The Foster Financial building looked different now, its shadows less threatening. As I walked through the lobby, employees nodded respectfully, not because I was Howard Foster's daughter, but because I had fought for justice and won. I paused at my new office, my father's old office. The safe was still there, now empty of secrets but full of possibilities. On the wall, I hung 2 frames, my father's original business license and my overturned conviction paperwork. Together, they told a story not just of fall and redemption, but of the price of integrity and the true meaning of legacy. Welcome back, Ms. Foster, my assistant said, bringing in the morning reports. I smiled, sitting down at my father's desk, my desk now. It's good to be back. Let's get to work. The sun rose over the city, casting long shadows through the office windows. Somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus was beginning his own 5-year journey. But unlike him, I had used my time to build something stronger than revenge. I had built the truth. And the truth, as our father always said, was the best insurance of all.